It's good to be here at the Christian Council of Britain's inaugural conference, and to be invited very kindly by our conference secretary, beg your pardon, to give an address. And the theme of this address, continuing on the addresses before, with regard to one of the biggest dangers facing our society, our civilization, our religion and our inherent freedoms, to accept the gospel of our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ. Another threat that faces this freedom is the threat that comes and is posed by something that I'm sure we're all familiar with to some extent, political correctness. I think political correctness is generally acknowledged to be, by most people today, one of the greatest features of our society, even though most people sometimes regard political correctness as something of a joke and frequently laugh about it. I think Peter Hitchens of the Mail on Sunday and a member of the Prayer Book Society of the Church of England has said that political correctness is no joke at all, but that it is a menace. I agree, and that's what I want to speak on, that menace today. Political correctness began in early revolutionary Russia, soon after the Bolshevik coup d'etat of November 1917 took over when the Red Guards stormed the citadel of the Kerensky government in Petrograd and seized the pilot's cabin of power in the Russian state. Within a few years, the Bolsheviks, were able to make peace with the Germans, destroy the Whites, their opponents within Russia, and formally declare the Soviet Union in 1922. From that point onwards, the real suffering began for the Russian, or should I say, the Soviet peoples. And a major part of it was the thought and emotional control effected upon quite ordinary people by the process of neuro-linguistic programming, a method of controlling what people can think or say by sequencing verbal stimuli to them to induce states of mind and moods of feeling by association, without the patient, in fact the victim, really being aware of what was happening, which is what made it all the more effective. I don't speak Russian, but I'm told that the Russian name for this was politichaya pravilnost, literally political truth or correctness, as the authorities wanted you to image their sequencing of falsehoods. It was right thought, official thought, as the authorities wanted you to see it, rather than real thought. But it was real programming. And that is what we are experiencing in Britain today. George Orwell referred to it way back in his 1948 book, 1984. He referred to it under the titles Doublethink and Newspeak, and it has quite a long and frightening history. In 1918, Trotsky used politichaya pravilnost to control the newly advancing Red Army. The Bolsheviks needed ex-Tsarist officers to form an army of 3 million, strong enough to defeat their internal enemies, the Whites. As a precaution, Trotsky attached political commissars, managers of a kind, politically reliable managers, to the army, and they became an integral part of the Red Army structure. The commissars, or managers, were dedicated party functionaries whose job it was to accompany the military officers permanently and report on their political correctness. No military order carried final authority unless it was countersigned by such a manager. Dr. Frank Ellis, late of Leeds University, a lecturer in Russian, has in fact studied the Leninist origin of politichikaya pravilnost in his work Political Correctness and the Theoretical Struggle, subtitled From Lenin and Mao to Marcuse and Foucault, published in Auckland by the Maxim Institute in 2004. In it, Dr. Ellis showed that the technical use of the term political correctness as we know it was current way back in 1921. See his page 5. That it was a world where the rational mind was viewed with suspicion, even hatred, see his work page 6, and that it makes serious intellectual thought and discussion impossible, page 12. It has re-emerged from the left on United States campuses since the 1980s, according, that is, to Alan Bullock, the author of Hitler, A Study in Tyranny. And political correctness is the source, of many anti-free speech rules to stamp out what it deems heresy, redesignated hate speech, a category broad and vague enough, he says, to effectively harass or discredit minority dissenting views and to encourage self-censorship among the timid majority. See the New Fontana Dictionary of Modern Thought, London Harper and Collins, 3rd edition, 1999, page 660. So that is the theme of this address, politichikaya pravilnost, or political correctness, as it is tied in with its method of conditioning or indoctrination, sometimes known or marketed as neuro-linguistic programming. Political correctness and the neuro-linguistic programming of the human mind, the human inner personality, and the human soul all go back to the Russian and Soviet scientist, Professor I.P. Pavlov, who lived from 1849 to 1936. It is that method of teaching, conditioning, indoctrination, or programming, which has been reintroduced on campus, in the media, and by the publicly funded leadership charity referred to sometimes in the Daily Telegraph, known as Common Purpose. It often involves the intimidation of people under the guise of something sounding rather good, such as, quote, promoting equality of opportunities, except that there is usually something corny in it. How do you promote equality of opportunities, for example? You can practice equality of opportunity or not, but promoting it is something surely for sales groups and marketing exercises. Anyway, that point is lost on the promoters of politichikaya pravilnost, maybe because they use the phrase promoting equality of opportunity simply as a code phrase for, in fact, promoting political correctness, an esoteric code which they are privy to, but which we are confounded by until we break their silly little code. A more modern tag for it, and the tags do change a little every now and then, just to keep us off of their tail. The devil doesn't like us to grab his tail, seems to be promoting, there is that giveaway word, not equality of opportunities, but equality and diversity. Equality and diversity. That is what we must undergo, like a cream being pushed through a tube. That seems to be the new neuro-linguistic cue to put into correct thought. That is, to put into non-thought and into robotic automata mode. Whatever cue or phrase is used, however, the aim is always to promote and use the stimulus response method of teaching and training, really programming, mind control, indoctrination, under the guise of teaching and training, and increasingly under the guise, I beg your pardon, of equality of opportunities, or equality and diversity, or some other such title or tag, which is beginning to bear the smell of humbug about it, even to the most intellectually challenged. Under this method, this process even, to somewhat glorify it, folk are being geared, even bullied, under the fear of being reported by their colleagues at work, or even by members of the public. They are being bullied into the tramlines of unquestioning and predictable orthodoxy. Oh, we can't say that, can we? Oh, you mustn't think that, can you? We've all seen the effect of this poison gas, this fog, as it spreads over academia and to the television sets of the big questions, for example, or into perhaps a bishop's parlour once he's asked you, would you like some more tea, or could you pass the cake? If you do not scrupulously, nay slavishly bow the knee, the heart, the mind, and most importantly, the inner soul, to these tramlines of circular non-reasoning, you may be denounced or put on a disciplinary hearing, affecting your career, your status in the community, and even your conception of your own self-worth. Oh, I feel such a naughty creature not being politically correct. At once, they will try to induce you into a sense of self-guilt, rather like the phrase that they used in the Middle Ages, "an heretic," or perhaps in New England, "witch," or in the Brotherhood republics such as Red China of more recent days, "an enemy of the people." And the only way to exonerate yourself before such a disciplinary, the modern equivalent of the Inquisition, or the Western counterpart to one of the people's tribunals, is to see the error of your ways, to confess your fault, that's a good one, to accuse yourself, volunteering your soul, your heart, your mind, for corrective training, corrective retraining. You will be taken and you will come back robotized, a kind of robotization. Perhaps you can exonerate yourself and gain angel's wings, politically correct angel's wings, that is, by implicating not only yourself and denouncing yourself before this Inquisition, but also implicating or denouncing others. The church, the people, the party, the human resources department are merciful. You will not be metaphorically hung this time. They are merciful. You hope they will be merciful, and they will be merciful. Why? Because they want to encourage conformity. That is the whole point of polityshikaya pravilnost. Conformity in the mind, conformity in the deeds, conformity in the words, but most important of all, conformity in the soul. But this mercy that they may extend to you comes at a price. You lose your freedom of thought, and that means you lose both your freedom and your thought. The media often try to do this with certain groups of people when you appear on the television set with them. The media, if you like, are very often the new People's Inquisition. Self-appointed, of course. The radical homosexuals indulge in the same thing. They come at you bullish with aggressive questioning, which is often question-begging. To one political candidate last year, they put the loaded question: what are you going to do to make lesbian, gay and bisexual people feel safe? To which the uncooperative questionee unexpectedly answered, and what are you going to do to make the rest of us feel safe? Whereupon the pressure group, the liberal pressure group, threatened him with making a report to the police. But if you do not like the answer, why ask the question? Or why not simply dutifully supply the requisite answer to the person you have questioned? But this is typical of our new self-styled liberals. They simply are not liberal. I'm the one who's liberal. They are not liberal at all. There is nothing liberal at all about any group that seeks to lock you up because you have a view that it cannot tolerate. We must be clear where the true liberals are. They are not with the Polityczkaya Prawilność Brigade. In this instance, however, the questionee was not locked up or even reported to the police. It was all humbug, pure humbug. But you only found that out once you had stood up to them. Political correctness is a permutation, a development of Marxism-Leninism, and it seeks to condition people to think certain thoughts and have certain feelings, rather than getting the people to think for themselves. It is a kind of mind conditioning akin to what goes on in third world countries such as North Korea. They do this by using Pavlov's methods of stimuli to effect a conditioned reflex response. That is, to effect an unthinking response, rather like the doctor hammers your knee and your leg jerks forward. Pavlov had done, you see, experiments on dogs, which were then applied to human beings, that is, to Soviet citizens. Under this approach, you use a word, a bell or a sign, or something else, to stimulate a conditioned reflex response which bypasses the thinking processes and achieves the required behaviour, thought, association, emotional effect or attitude on its recipient, the victim. Professor Pavlov had got his dogs to salivate on the ringing of a bell because he had conditioned them to associate the ringing of that bell with the delivery of food at mealtime, even when the food was not delivered. Political correctness is essentially the one-party state and monopoly media method of propaganda, in the pejorative sense of that word. You just get one view, one bell, and you're supposed to salivate. George Orwell put it well in his all-too-true-to-life novel in the 40s, Animal Farm. When the sheep kept barring, they kept barring, there's a simple message: 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. I have an account of many teacher training sessions somewhere, everywhere in England, where this kind of approach, something good, the opposite bad, is performed to induce an unthinking left-right response to various stimuli. So that if you use one word, you think bad, and if you use what they think is the opposite word, you think good. It can be applied to words, or it could be applied to phrases like equality and diversity. So when they trot out this phrase, equality and diversity, you all jump up, you get into formation, you all go marching through the "I approve of this thing" door, even though you're not quite sure what it is. So I have an account of this that took place somewhere. And the theme was, I think it was, if the report was correct, I think it was on differentiation in teaching. Differentiation in teaching, good, and of course the opposite, bad. The trainers at this seminar wanted a conditioned reflex response to their politically correct mantra about the word differentiation. That was the training cue that was supposed to inculcate, affirm and induce all kinds of warm and gooey feelings and things about an approach to teaching, without anyone actually really knowing or unpacking or discussing or thinking what differentiation in teaching really meant. The phrase was meant to get us in line and march through the "I approve of differentiation in teaching" doorway. It is quite typical of the politically correct approach to carry out this kind of thing. And I can only liken this method really to a kind of a medicine man ritual dance, where you dance round the subject without really telling anyone what the subject is precisely and concisely. I mean, we have these kind of ritual medicine men dances whenever the subject of racism comes up. We all sort of dance round the fire of this phrase, but we don't seem to understand what it means. We get the idea it is a sort of bad thing, but never really get to see what it is. The mere use of the term differentiation is intended to induce all of us to clap. Differentiation in teaching. All of us to clap like circus seals, rather than to discuss and debate, unpack what it really is in practice. Differentiation good, discrimination bad. The opposite cue was the word discrimination. The word discrimination, that's the opposite cue, is supposed to conjure up all kinds of bad feelings, which we are to condemn and sideline. So, differentiation in teaching, we all get into line and march through the approval door. I agree with it, it's a good thing. Discrimination, how dreadful, we all go through the opposite door. So, we're all there like circus, this is teachers, we're all there like circus seals, clapping. Or we're all there like sheep, barring. I mean, David Cameron has got problems if he's going to try to sort out education. In fact, he's got problems anyway. The dutiful trainees at this phrase differentiation were expected to bar back like sheep. Differentiation good, discrimination bad. The problem with this politically correct training exercise, as it has been reported to me, and of course no idea where it took place, and the reason why at this particular point it went so very, very badly wrong, was that the trainers had chosen as opposing cues two words which have the same denotation. To discriminate bad is to differentiate good. Both mean to recognise a difference or to treat differently. But the trainers no longer used to using words to convey meaning, as most of us still do, but rather to stimulate an unthinking response, rather like Pavlov's bells, had not spotted this. I suppose it was a case of the victimizer falling victim to his own victimization. Pavlov, not his dogs, salivating at his own bells. They had chosen synonyms to induce opposite conditioned responses. One good in the case of the word differentiate, and the other bad in the case of the word discriminate. Occasionally, a refusal to think for oneself does have consequences. When one trainee defined the one synonym in terms of the other, that is, when one trainee said, well, differentiation is discrimination, some of the trained seals did not know which way to clap. The dog handlers lost control of the dogs. The kennel went wild. The spell was utterly broken. Hell broke out. That was the best training or conditioning exercise many of us human seals had attended. For it showed how idiotic, how stupid, how utterly fallacious neuro-linguistic programming is, and that it should have no part at all in training or teaching. And yet it dominates the soft, far-left, globalist and anti-Christian halls of the media. It also dominates the main death stream parties and the top hierarchies of many of our denominations. The question has to be asked, why? The answer has to be found, I think, partly in human nature, which is lazy. It is just so easy to follow blindly, untrammelled by thought. Another part of the answer, I think, is in human paranoia. Leaders can be very touchy and sensitive to any form of questioning of their deeds, which questioning they sometimes, without good grounds, take for disloyalty to them or their cause. There are many kinds of government, both within and outside of the church, which just do not like to be questioned. Possibly because they are aware that they do not have the answer. This is surely the source of neuro-linguistic programming in the media and of politichikaya pravilnost. It has certainly been perfected to a very high degree within communism and the far left, whether the soft or the hard variety. It certainly has a long lineage in those quarters going back to George Orwell's lifetime and experience, long before he wrote his novel in 1948. But I have picked up something like it in church history, in the practices and methods of the Holy Inquisition. There, in that very title, we have an earlier example of doublethink and newspeak. But the fact is that politichikaya pravilnost is a great danger to our whole way of life. It is a cancer and a tyranny spreading to ever-increasing areas of our society and conditioning the young especially not to think and to be frightened of thinking, to behave like trained seals, but in a human circus. It is so soul-destroying, it is so illiberal, it is so dehumanizing, and it is so anti-God and anti-Christian, who made man in his own image. God, who has commanded the light to shine into our hearts by the knowledge of his Son in the face of Christ Jesus, commands us to worship him with all of our hearts, with all of our souls, with all of our strength, and with all of our mind, and not to serve this idol which makes all of us less than human. But politichikaya pravilnost is not simply about inducing conditioned reflex responses, sending us on training or retraining courses and programming, and robotizing us for our role in some hideous brave new world. It is also about stopping us being able to think, and that is perhaps one of its most dangerous aspects. For we must either be a healthy church and society, where people really do think because they can think, or we will become some vast and barren, thought-free, as well as value-free wilderness or zone. For it is as sure as night follows day that without good thought and clear discrimination in our mind, we become less than human, and so worse than human. This is the new dark age. Politykaia pravilnost also tries to intimidate us, lest we be tempted to think out our thoughts openly and infect others, such as our children or grandchildren, with the values and views which prevailed before the thought curtain and night of the doublespeak, Equality and Human Rights Commission came down. Thank you very much.